My judges are ready? And the timers, you ready? All right. The affirmative team?
Yes.
And Grayson?
Yeah.
Right, well, in this final negative speech of today's debate round, when we close it out from my partner's and mine perspective, we're going to be looking at 3 reasons that the affirmative team's plan simply has not been merited in today's debate round and simply should not be voted for. But before we do that, let's point out something significant. Now, my partner has been talking about an argument this whole debate round that, talking about a piece of evidence that historically, when you try to solve a fiscal crisis and a debt problem with tax hikes, it only makes the situation worse. This went unresponded to by the affirmative team in the last speech. So thus we can see that thus far, right now in the debate round, they accept the fact that historically, tax hikes have made a fiscal crisis worse. So when the affirmative team comes up and talks about in the next speech how there's a fiscal crisis, we need to solve it, keep in mind they've accepted that a tax hike will only make this worse. Under the other point about 10 years to fix the fiscal crisis, they said every minute we wait makes it worse. However, we have 10 years to solve this problem. As their piece of evidence said, we have 10 years before a fiscal crisis comes into play. So we have adequate time. The affirmative team's plan does not urgently need to be passed. We'll look at one more argument before going into the reasons, and that of increased spending. Now, they basically said that there's a contradiction, that we said that Congress will increase spending under their plan, but that they're when under pressure, they'll cut spending. These arguments go very well together. The first argument is that when Congress is under pressure, they'll cut spending, and the other argument is that when Congress feels like they have more revenue, they can loosen up and spend more. And the affirmative team's plan, through giving Congress more revenue, allows them to feel like they're not under pressure so that they can spend more. So these arguments actually coalesce, they go together. So the affirmative team's plan will end up increasing spending. As we saw from the evidence from the Heritage Foundation and the FTT, is meant to fund spending programs that their plan would not go to reducing the deficit, it would only go towards increased spending, so they don't get that advantage. Let's go down now to the 3 reasons why this plan should not be voted for. The first reason is that of historical failure. Historical failure. And here we'll be talking about the United Kingdom. The first argument we need to take a look at is the argument of the London Stock Exchange and how much of that is high-frequency trading. Now, the affirmative team, my partner and the affirmative team actually made the same argument that essentially the London Stock Exchange is so huge that it's most of the UK's market. The affirmative team accepted that in their last speech. They said that I believe, quote, when you tax the stock market, you're essentially taxing everything. So there's another couple things, but those aren't significant. So the affirmative team has accepted that the London Stock Exchange is very big and it's most of the market. And we saw that 77% of the United Kingdom's market is high-frequency traders. That means that this tax on the largest part of their market did essentially nothing to reduce the problem of high-frequency traders that they claim increase volatility. That means that the United Kingdom's FTT did not work. Why can we expect it to work here? Additionally, under my disadvantage for volatility, I read a piece of evidence that according to studies from countries, the UK included among those countries, show that an FTT will only increase volatility, which, as we can see, comes together with the fact that the FTT in the UK only increased the amount of high-frequency traders to around 70% of the market. Let's go down to the second reason their plan is not merited, which is economic stagnation. Reason number 2 is economic stagnation. First off, let's talk about the investment argument. Now, my argument in my speech was that there are 2 kinds of short-term investors. There's the high-frequency traders they talk about, and there's productive short-term investors. Now, they said there's only one kind, but my evidence was from the Congressional Budget Office, which deals with all the government's budgets and the economy, so it's very credible, talking about that clear distinction and how that needs to be defined. And the Congressional Budget Office specifically said that an FTT would discourage, while it would maybe discourage high-frequency trading, it would also discourage short-term productive investment. This was only being responded to by the affirmative team by saying, well, high-frequency traders are the only ones that discourage. But they didn't respond to the fact that there are 2 kinds of short-term traders, high-frequency traders and productive ones, and they discourage both. That means that the economy is harmed, which we read evidence for. The second argument is that of lower wages. Now, I ran the argument that the investors will just pass the cost down to consumers. They said, well, consumers aren't taxed. That's not my point. My point is that while the investors are taxed, they end up passing that cost down to the consumers in the form of lower wages, which means that the economy is indeed harmed. So going to the final reason that they shouldn't be voted for, which is market instability. And here we'll be talking about volatility. First off, I'd like to point out that my partner's argument about shifting headquarters was not responded to. The affirmative team claimed that we accepted that they increased long-term investment, but we didn't. My partner ran the argument that it's very easy for a high-frequency trading firm to just shift its headquarters to another country so it won't solve the problem. So if they talk about long-term investment being increased in their speech, remember the argument that they dropped, that high-frequency traders will just shift to other countries and the problem will not be solved. Under market instability, we saw evidence that according to empirics from the United Kingdom, volatility was increased with an FTT, which coalesces with the facts that high-frequency trading also increased. So I ask you for these reasons to vote down the Affirmative Team's plan and vote instead for the status quo. Thank you.